Hi, Christina. I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for having me again. Okay, so y'all know I have to start out with this disclaimer. This information is intended to be educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration you, the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific, individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.
Everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. I'm excited to have on again Kari, a dedicated certified financial planner with over 17 years of experience and founder of Adapted Financial Design. Committed to providing a personalized financial planning solutions. I'm so excited to have you on. I think now more than ever, we need to have this conversation about financial planning and thinking about our futures, especially the way the economy is looking like today.
Yeah, and Christina, thank you for having me on. Last time I was on, we talked about finances in general, and I'm so happy that today we can drill down into a more specific topic to give you a little bit more individualized advice.
So, first question. What
Mhm.
are the first steps a woman should take to manage finances independently, let's say after a divorce?
Yeah. And so here's my top piece of advice for anybody. Always. Women, man, married, not married, never give up control of your finances. Never relinquish that. Again, you don't have to be the primary person in your household tracking the finances or paying your bills, but you should have an understanding of your accounts, what they're invested in, where they're held, and also who the beneficiary is. Those are the most important things for any person. I do have a couple of steps for everyone. This can be if you're filing for divorce or not filing for divorce. And then we go through kind of, what you should do during the divorce and what you should do after divorce. But my top tip always is never give up control of your finances. So, if you're someone that's maybe considering filing for divorce, I want you to take an inventory of your assets and liabilities. So, track down your checking, your savings, your retirement, any assets that you hold. And then I also want you to find your liabilities. And this is all liabilities because oftentimes it may be that if one person isn't in control of the finances, they find out that there's more liabilities than they thought there were. So think mortgage, HELOCs, personal loans, business loans, credit card debt. I want you to track it all down. And then make sure you know which was yours that you had before the marriage and what was jointly. And again, make a list and make sure you know how to access all of these accounts. Also get ready, put together your team, which should consist of a divorce attorney, a financial advisor, and also a tax professional. Again, surround yourself with a support system of friends and family because a divorce is a very difficult time. So those are some things you should do if you're, working to kind of in the process to file for divorce.
No, I love how you break
If,
that down.
oh, go ahead.
No, I loved how you break that down because I think one of my things is I didn't have a financial planner when doing that. And so it's like, it's sometimes a shock, going from,
Yeah.
having accesses and resources to one thing and then having it, cut off and then managing like budgets and things like that. So what are some like also on top of it, like adaptive ways, to create that financial new budget?
Yeah. And so that's one of the most important things that I strive to say to do during the divorce, right? You might not be on that new budget. You might still have access to the same cash flow, but I want you to put together a new budget because this is going to determine a lot of things. Especially important where you're going to live. So you're going to need to know, what your budget is to determine if you're going to stay in your residence, if you're going to move. So it's very crucial to have this. So work to determine if you think you're going to be getting any spousal or child support, or if you're going to be paying those things too, right? Because you could be on the other end of that. to kind of see what your lifestyle is going to look like after the divorce and then ease into it, right? So even again, if you still have access to that same cash flow currently because it's not a finalized divorce, I want you to start planning as if it is, right? Start living that way, maybe a little bit more frugally, just because it's easier then to do it now than after the divorce is finalized to have a complete shift of a budget. So that would be my tip, is to ease into it. And again, budgeting can be as simple or as complex as you want. I would say if you're going through a divorce, be a little bit more cognizant of your expenses, and you can work with a financial professional and they will help you track your budget.
I remember in our last conversation, something that I thought was a good tip is don't get like a credit card. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like do the budget with what you have in the actual cash flow and don't, rely on credit cards. And I was like, I wish I would have done a little bit more of that, not that I have like crazy credit card debt, but I do think that it is important because it can, interest rates now. I mean, yes, I know they have programs for 0%, but like, interest rates now are like 26% and you compound on that. Like it's hard to keep up with that stuff, like you don't want to get caught drowning in that. And because you just never know what's going to happen. So I always think that was a great tip that you did for when we had that first conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, in addition to that, you should build up kind of a safety net, right? Look into a high yield savings account and build up 3 to 6 months worth of expenses and have that. Now, during a divorce, that's going to take a huge hit. So, usually, when I meet with someone and it's post divorce, or even if they're in the middle of the divorce, we work on building that cushion, right? Because there's going to be money coming and going, and it's hard to keep track of with all the other things that are going on. So, it's absolutely crucial always to have a little buffer there, a little emergency fund, but especially during a divorce.
So what about some women, who don't have like the best, credit scores and things like that?
Mhm.
So what are some ways that women or anyone can really start rebuilding that credit score? And, why is it so important for someone to do that?
Yeah. So, Christina, how many years on average do you think it takes a woman to recover financially from a divorce? Putting you on the spot here.
I don't know, like a minimum of a year.
Yeah, it's 5 years is the
Okay.
average, right? So it's a long time. That might even be more than it takes you to emotionally recover. Who knows?
Yeah.
So what I want you to think about is every day is a new day, right? Every day is a new chance to do better. And you can set some goals for yourself, work with a financial planner, and build that credit back. Credit can be built back. It's not something that happens overnight, but it is something you can work towards. So I know this is contradictory advice to what I just said about not using a credit card, but credit cards are kind of the best way to rebuild credit. So if you can, open one card with a very low interest rate and pay it off every month. Only use what you can and make sure you pay it off every month. So that's why the budget becomes even more important, is because if you're using a credit card, right, you have access to additional funds. In your head, you're like, oh, this is extra money. It's not extra money, and it'll end up hurting you in the long run. So, in addition to that cash buffer, again, one credit card, try not to go too crazy, and then just utilize it only for the necessities and only what you can pay back. Those are really important things. Another thing to do that some people don't think of, and I would almost recommend doing this during your divorce, is to meet with a tax advisor. Because probably during your divorce, you were filing jointly. And now, after your divorce, it's possible you're filing either single or head of household, and that's going to look different, right? So, you're going to want to know what the tax ramifications are. Also, if you think about how assets are split, it becomes even more important if there's retirement assets, after tax assets, to meet with a tax advisor or a financial planner during your divorce to discuss that before you finalize everything. I can tell you a story, kind of a nightmare situation, but husband and wife, they're married, they live very comfortably. Husband is the primary breadwinner and handles all the finances. The wife was somewhat blindsided by the divorce, and really felt emotionally tied to staying in the residence, really wanted to stay in that primary residence. And so she accepted a little bit less of assets than probably she should have gotten, and they were the after tax assets. Now, her husband had been investing those rather aggressively, and she never rebalanced those. So she started to have to pull from those assets to pay the mortgage after her divorce, and she ended up with a giant tax bill because there were huge gains. In addition, they were invested aggressively. The market took a turn and those assets were worth significantly less. And she ended up having to sell the home. So that's why it's important. And I know that's really scary. And it doesn't always have to be that way, but that's why you should meet with a financial advisor and a tax planner during your divorce to kind of mitigate some of those issues that could pop up.
No, I think that's really important because, like you said, you can have these unexpected big tax
Yeah.
bills, and you're pulling out of funds that, every time you pull them out, like you get taxed on them, and then it just compounds. And yeah, so I do think that's great advice. And before we dive into our next segment, is there anything else you'd like the audience to take away from our conversation today?
Yeah. So after your divorce, it's especially important to meet with a financial advisor and possibly even an estate planning attorney because everything has now changed, right? If you didn't want your retirement account to go to your ex-spouse, you need to change those beneficiaries because legally it says that they are the beneficiary of those accounts. So make sure you get those changed. In addition, probably a lot of things have changed with what's going to happen. If you had kids, who's going to take those? So it's especially important at that time to make sure your beneficiaries are up to date as well as redo any estate planning that had been done previously.
Well, thank you so much for all of that wonderful information. It is time for our Power Mom Chronicles section, and I cannot
Yay.
wait to dive into this. So my first question to you is, what's a game-changing lesson life has taught you?
I mean, gosh, so many, right? You just have to roll with the punches. Life is going to throw everything at you. And oftentimes, when it rains, it pours, and you're going to feel like everything's coming at you at once. But life happens when you're busy making plans. And this is coming from a financial planner. I mean, I would plan out my day minute by minute if I could. But I also have to understand that you can't do that and you have to be flexible. So I would say being flexible, Christina.
And who and what inspires you?
Moms, honestly, I have so many mom friends and I meet so many moms like at the playground and because I'm a mother of three small kids and they're the funniest, wittiest people I have ever met. And, their F's, if you will, have kind of just gone out the window and they're laying it all out there. And I just can relate to them so much and I love it.
And my third question to you is, offer a piece of wisdom for moms striving to find their strength and voice.
Yeah, I mean, you're stronger than you think you are. You have been raising children, you have been doing all the hard work. You should know your power. Come into your power and really use it.
And the best advice you've ever received.
Oh my gosh, so so much advice I've received, right? I would say probably be yourself. I know everybody says the quote, be yourself, everybody else is already taken and that's, used up. But honestly and truly, just learn to be yourself and find the people that enjoy being around you and just you and not maybe some made up version of yourself. So be yourself.
Well, what a great way to end this week's episode of Not Your Mama's podcast. All of Kari's links are down below in the show notes. Don't be shy, go say hi, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Christina.